The ocean had always been a place of mystery to me, but I never imagined it would become the reason I was trapped on a deserted island. The day began with clear skies and calm winds. I was on a small boat, sailing toward distant lands when the horizon turned dark. Clouds gathered like an army, and within moments a storm raged across the sea. The waves rose higher than mountains, and the boat cracked under the force of the wind and water. I fought with all my strength to stay afloat, but the sea swallowed everything I carried. By the time the storm passed, I was drifting on a piece of broken wood, exhausted and trembling. The current pushed me toward land, and when I finally opened my eyes, I found myself lying on the sand of a lonely island. At first, I believed that rescue would come quickly. I lit fires with broken branches, hoping a passing ship would see the smoke. I shouted into the open sky as though my voice could reach the world beyond the horizon. But days passed, then weeks, and there was no sign of another human being. Slowly, the truth pressed into my heart. I was alone, and survival was in my hands. The island was both beautiful and cruel. The beach shimmered under the sunlight, and the jungle behind me was alive with green leaves and the sound of birds. Yet food and water were not easy to find. I searched the trees for fruit and cracked coconuts for their sweet liquid. I sharpened sticks into crude spears to catch fish near the shore. I learned quickly that survival required patience and constant effort. Each day became a test of willpower. Loneliness became my greatest enemy. The silence of the island weighed on me like an invisible stone. I had no voice to hear but my own. Sometimes I spoke to the waves, sometimes to the birds that landed on the sand. I even gave names to the turtles and crabs, pretending they were my companions. It was the only way to keep my mind from drowning in despair. Time moved strangely on the island. Without a calendar or a clock, I marked the days on a large rock using a sharp shell. Each line carved into the stone was proof that I had survived. 10 days, then 100 days, and then many more. My body grew stronger, leaner, and darker under the endless sun. I was no longer the person who had once stepped onto the boat. The island was shaping me into someone different. After many months, I built a shelter from palm leaves and pieces of driftwood. It began as a weak roof, but slowly I improved it. Tying the frame together with vines, I carved tools from stone and bone, creating knives to cut and nets to trap fish. I planted seeds from fruits near a small stream, and to my joy, small plants grew. They became my garden, my symbol of hope. Storms returned many times. The winds tore at my shelter, and the rain flooded the beach, but each time I rebuilt, learning from my mistakes. I discovered which parts of the island were safe from flooding, and which trees provided the strongest wood. With every challenge, I became more skilled. The island tested me, but I refused to surrender. What hurt me most was the silence at night. When the stars covered the sky, I lay awake, thinking about the world I had lost. I thought of family, friends, and voices that once surrounded me. My heart ached with longing. Yet I also realized something important. The island had given me strength I never knew I had. I learned to be patient, to endure, and to find beauty even in hardship. By the time 1,000 days had passed, I was no longer the same person who had arrived broken and afraid. I was stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The island was no longer only a prison. It had become my teacher. I had faced hunger, storms, loneliness, and despair, and I had survived them all. Standing on the highest cliff, I looked out at the endless sea. The waves moved calmly under the sun, as if whispering to me that one day rescue might come. Whether it would take another day or another 1,000 days, I now believed I could endure. The island had taught me the greatest lesson. Even when the world takes away everything, hope can still remain. The sun rose over the island like a burning lantern, spilling light across the waves. I had been living in isolation for so long that the rhythm of nature became my only clock. Birds announced the dawn, crickets sang at night, and the tide whispered its ancient song. Yet deep inside me, a longing grew stronger every day. The longing to return home. I had survived 1,000 days, but now I wanted more than survival. I wanted freedom. The idea of building a raft first came to me while sitting on the cliff, watching driftwood float away from the beach. If the sea could carry a broken tree, perhaps it could carry me as well. The thought was both terrifying and exciting. I knew that the ocean could swallow me as it had swallowed my boat before, but hope made me bold. I began gathering wood. The island's palm trees provided long, straight trunks. With my stone tools, I cut them down, stripped the leaves, and carried them to the shore. It took weeks, maybe months, to gather enough. I lashed them together with thick vines, weaving them until they felt strong. Slowly, a shape appeared. A raft wide enough to hold me, my water gourds, and a few bundles of dried fruit and fish. But the raft was not enough. I needed a sail. I stitched together palm leaves, binding them tightly with thin vines, and fixed them to a tall pole carved from the heart of a tree. It was rough, uneven, but when the wind blew, the sail pulled gently against the wood. My heart filled with hope. Still, doubt haunted me. What if the ocean destroyed my raft? What if I drifted into endless waves and never found land? At night, I lay awake, staring at the stars, asking them for answers. The stars had become my only teachers of direction. By tracing their movements, I had learned how to tell east from west, north from south. I trusted them to guide me if I ever set sail. While I worked on the raft, life on the island continued. I still fished, still tended to my small garden, and still marked each day on the stone. But now, every mark felt like a countdown. Each carved line whispered, "Soon." There were moments of despair. Once, a storm swept across the island and tore apart half of my raft. I wept that night, feeling as if the sea was laughing at my weakness. Yet when the morning came, I rebuilt it stronger than before. Another time, I grew ill from eating spoiled fruit. My body burned with fever, and I thought my end had come. But I endured, drinking water from the stream and resting in the shade until strength returned. Despite these hardships, I was no longer afraid. The island had trained me. It had taught me to fight storms, hunger, and loneliness. My spirit, once fragile, had become unbreakable. As the rafts neared completion, I prepared supplies. I dried strips of fish in the sun, filled hollow gourds with fresh water, and gathered coconuts. I also carried a small wooden carving I had made of the island itself, as a memory of the place that had shaped me. Though I wanted to leave, I also knew I would never forget the land that had been both my prison and my teacher. When the raft was ready, I stood on the shore for a long time. The sea stretched before me, vast and merciless, but also full of possibility. Behind me lay the island that had kept me alive for 1,000 days. My heart was torn between gratitude and desire. On the morning of my departure, the sky was clear and the wind was strong. I pushed the raft into the waves, climbed aboard, and let the sail catch the wind. The island grew smaller as the current carried me away. For the first time in years, I felt movement toward a new destiny. The journey was harder than I imagined. The sun burned my skin, and salts stung my eyes. My raft rose and fell with the endless rhythm of the waves, tossing me like a leaf in the wind. Nights were the hardest. The darkness seemed infinite, and the stars were my only comfort. Yet each morning, the sun reminded me that I was still alive. There were moments of terror. One day, a shadow moved beneath the raft, and I saw the fin of a great shark. It circled me, reminding me of how fragile I truly was. But the shark soon disappeared into the deep, leaving me trembling but alive. Another time, a storm returned, and I clung to the raft as lightning split the sky and waves crashed over me. I shouted at the storm with all my strengths, refusing to surrender. Days turned into weeks, and still I drifted. My supplies grew smaller, and I began rationing every drop of water, every bite of food. I sang to myself, spoke to the stars, and prayed to the horizon. Loneliness returned, sharper than before, but I clung to hope. Then, one morning, I saw it. At first, it was only a faint line on the horizon, but as the sun rose higher, the line grew into the shape of land. My heart leapt, and tears filled my eyes. I shouted with all my strength, as if the sea itself needed to hear my joy. With the last of my strength, I steered the raft toward the shore. Hours later, waves carried me onto a sandy beach. I collapsed on the ground, kissing the earth beneath me. I was no longer trapped. I had escaped. The island had taken 1,000 days of my life, but it had also given me something greater: courage, resilience, and unshakable hope. Wherever I would go next, I knew that nothing in the world could ever break me again.